need to stretch more, my left knee. If I squat down to pick something up, I gotta grab hold of something to lift myself. It used to be my right knee, and now it's my left. It must have been my left that was supporting my right all this time, and now the left is giving out. Like my mom, I'll likely end up with knee replacements. Caroline and I are just back from lunch and a nice walk, except for seeing a seagull that's legs were tied together by fishing line, and nobody could do anything about it because he was in an illegal, closed-off section of the pier. He could let the wind pick him up and soar a little, but he'd descend back to the cement and land crookedly on his tied-up legs, left behind, watching his flock soar, screeching for their help. Caroline and I were in a panic, asking people for scissors. I was gonna jump the barricade and cut the line that tied his legs together, but we couldn't find anything. We couldn't even find fingernail clippers. We found a fisherman with a big bloody serrated fishing knife, but the line that tied the seagull's feet together needed to be snipped quickly. Trying to saw the line with a knife while a seagull was fighting you off could tear his legs off. I'm no expert in animal rescue, but that knife wasn't gonna work. Plus people were gathering around, and fuck if I was gonna be caught on video jumping a barricade on a fishing pier with an enormous bloody knife in my hand. I can see the headline now. Crazed musician jumps barricade bludgeoning seagulls with large knife. A fisherman threw him an anchovy, and another seagull chewed it up and spit it down the disabled seagull's beak. The helpless seagull did one last soar and landed in the bay. My shoulders slumped, and I said to a middle-aged British tourist next to me, "Well, I guess I'll be part of the food chain." He and I then talked about how we eat animals that we hoped were treated humanely. Then I interrupted him. "Wow. We're two old white dudes patting ourselves on the back. Who are we kidding? Every animal that we eat is killed against their will." Then we talked about plastic and how we grew up with plastic, and now we're told not to use it anymore. And right there before our eyes was the reason that plastic is slowly being phased out. I'm going fishing tomorrow, and I hope someone invents some kind of eco-friendly fishing line. Maybe they already have. I'll have to ask around. Perch and rockfish, I use 2 to 3 hooks set about 1.5 feet apart with a 3-ounce weight tied to the bottom. If one of those hooks gets caught on a rock covered in mussels while trying to reel in a fish, the line breaks and the fish gets bashed against the mussels every time a wave comes, until a seal comes around and gets him, or the crabs pick him apart. Yes, they become part of the food chain. But I hate thinking of a fish stuck on a line like that and being bashed against the rocks and a plastic line that's out there in the water. The tourist said that he and his wife were famous for owning a one-off handmade car that was made in the late 60s, that they were on some British TV show. I chuckled and said that I was B-level famous. They said, "B-level famous for what?" I said, "I'm a musician." That's what I sounded like. I said, "Well, like Nick Cave, I guess, sort of dark." The guy lit up and said, "All right, Nick Cave." When being asked what kind of music I play, I always try to get inside of the person's head who is asking, walk in their shoes for a second, and think of a denominator they'll connect with. I've answered this question many times with various replies ranging from Neil Young to R.E.M. to Radiohead. Something they'll know. It's the right way to get it over with when you realize the jam you've put yourself in, like this one. 2 old guys talking about our fame while absolutely nobody hovers around us asking for autographs. He talked about how he didn't know who Nick Cave was until Nick collaborated with a famous female singer. I can't think of her name. I don't know enough about Nick Cave, but to bring this conversation to an end as quickly as possible, I pretended that I knew exactly who the female singer was, and he said, "Yeah, she's who put him on the map." the middle of all this, Caroline got a text saying that our table was ready. I could see the relief in her face, not only because we'd be eating lunch soon, but also because we found a genuine segue to shake off the tourists. The lunch place was way up on Polk Street. We needed to get moving. We shook the British tourists' hands and said goodbye. Caroline said, "That poor seagull, oh my God, that conversation went on for a long time, Mark." I said, "Well, I was the one who started it." The sound of that seagull's panic is something I won't soon forget, nor the tourist going on about his rare one-off handmade car. On our way back up Russian Hill, we talked about the seagull, and I grumbled a bit about a friend who has mysteriously turned all pouty on me about vague things. I'm not sure what the issue is, but he hasn't communicated with me for about a week. If you're a man racking your brains trying to figure out why your friend is ignoring you and being uncooperative, creating walls for reasons that you can't identify, the answer may lie in the fact that he's significantly shorter than you. If he's older than you, that could be it too, or maybe if he's single. What did Captain Ahab say in Moby Dick? Something like, "The old whales attract less females, it makes them bitter." We finally sat down for lunch on Upper Polk Street. While I was drinking my iced tea, a waitress with a British accent handed me a plastic straw and asked, "A cunt or a bond?" I said, "I'm sorry, excuse me, I didn't understand." She looked at me perturbed and repeated, "A cunt or a bond?" In the middle of that Sunday brunch den, for a solid 10 to 15 seconds, I had no idea what in the fuck was happening. With vacillating eyes, I nodded yes. She handed me the straw and dashed quickly away from the imbecile of the day. I was shaking my head, confused, looking at Caroline like, what did I do? Caroline leaned in towards me and said, very quietly, "The waitress was asking you, do you want contraband?" Caroline and I got sandwiches at Molinari at about 2 p.m., but the tables were so full, both there and at Trieste, so we took a cab back to my place to eat them. I hadn't yet packed for my tour and showed her various suit jacket and pants combinations that I was considering bringing. I want to bring my old eelskin shoes, but wanted to make sure that they looked okay with whatever suit I brought. The shoes could be 10 years old and they're very worn, contrasting too much with my newer clothes. But she said they looked fine with everything I was trying on, and that I wasn't going anywhere where I needed to appear too flashy. I'm leaving tomorrow for Vancouver to play various Canadian and USA shows until the end of September, mostly secondary markets. I've never been too concerned about my appearance in the past, but at 52, I don't want to look too dopey. Jeans were cool up until I was about 49, but when I turned 50, it was time to show up on stage looking like a grown-up. From my place, we walked to Aquatic Park Pier through the marina and back. We got groceries, and then she went home and I came back here, where I'm waiting for her to come over for dinner. It's been so warm that I got candles burning to kill off the flies and mosquitoes that are swarming around. I'm 50% packed. My flight isn't till 5 p.m. tomorrow, so the rest of the packing can wait. I'm bringing Black Spring by Henry Miller. I may be 100 pages into it so far, and it's like reading a long dream. Caroline's on her way over, and I'm gonna scrub the bathtub before she gets here. I'm at the Sandman Hotel in Vancouver. Before I left for tour yesterday, I ran errands with Caroline. Then we came back to my apartment. She sat on my couch and laid my head down in her lap. I was holding her so tight, saying over and over, "I don't want to go." My nerves were maxing out. My overall feeling is it's the length of the tour, 3 weeks. But walk in the park for a young man, but I'm in a different place now. I spent last night moving mattresses around on the floor to get away from a high-pitched hum that's coming from somewhere in this hotel room. I slept poorly and have a big bag under my right eye. I woke up to this email from Justin. It's a reply to one I sent him. I'll read his email now and then read my response back to him. Mark, very sorry for such a slow reply. I was actually in the US for 3 shows in New York, then a fest in Providence of all places. Was only back home a day, then Berlin, then straight into a 50th birthday party, which I didn't really want, but thought I better tick the box. I'm still jet-lagged and so tired, and I'm only catching up with emails from the last week now. Anyway, great to hear from you, and nice that you basically took the summer off for resting and just enjoying. I've not felt so tired in my life as I have this last year. I've done a lot of shows, but being 50 is a new level of tiredness I've found, which has been confirmed by others around me who are 50 plus. Maybe you found the same thing, but man, it's heavy. I'm gonna check out Petra Hayden since I've heard good things. Would love to hear your collab with her. No worries with accounting, whenever you can. Yeah, the Grand Heart tribute. Happy to hear Patti Smith is contributing. Looking forward to finishing this new Yezu album, which has taken over a year so far. It's taken that long, though, due to working on it intermittently during so many other things and shows. I'll have other music to send you, maybe a good bit in 2020. I'll have music that's appropriate again. Eventually, I hope. It would be a great and nice surprise for people, for us to have a collab record out there again. Anyways, back to catching up on emails and catching up with sleep. My best to you and the family. Thank you, Justin. Justin, I'm just beginning a tour here in Vancouver that's going to be 3 weeks long. It's funny what you said about being 50, because somebody asked me recently, when does the real fatigue, the real aches and pains set in? Without hesitation, I said 50. I was in Australia and New Zealand this past May and June, and I thought, who knows? Never mind post-tour depression anymore. Now that might be my last tour ever depression. I get mysterious aches and pains out of nowhere. Overall, everything's become harder to do and more tiring. I did a lot of thinking over the summer, and I'm thinking about semi-retiring from the live part of this business. Not 100% sure on that, but touring's becoming harder work, and I feel confident this way of life could be the end of me if I did too much of it. That's great that you're out there playing. Treat yourself to some much-deserved rest, and I'll do the same at the end of this month. Happy 50th, Mark. I arrived in Calgary today at maybe 6 p.m. I walked the streets and I walked and I walked, and I couldn't find a single thing to take a photo of until I saw a bird that looked like a cross between a robin and a blue jay with a long, sleek, shoehorn-shaped blue-black tail. I tried to get close enough to get a photo, but he trotted away quickly. He was a big bird, but light as a quail on his feet. He wasn't gonna try to fly away on account of me, but fuck if he was gonna let me invade his personal space. I have no idea what kind of bird he was, and I'm not gonna try to Google him, because I can tell he's not the type who wants to be Googled. He's here to enjoy the moment, not the social media type. He's not looking for validation. He minds his own business. That bird was the only sign of animal life I saw today. Before dinner, I asked the woman at the front desk for restaurant advice. She recommended a bar a block away that had snacks. I said, thanks, but I'm not looking for a bar. I'm looking for a restaurant. She then recommended another bar that also happened to have food. Does Canada assume that everybody in the entire world prioritizes alcohol over food? I don't mean this in a mean way. I observe for a living. I'm just curious is all. I'm not being judgmental. And she told me about a dim sum place nearby called 2 Pennies. I don't know what was going on in that dim sum place, but the two waitresses there were really nice to me, like I was Leonardo DiCaprio or something. One recommended a variety of dishes, and I asked for iced tea. She said, well, you're American, so I should let you know that the iced tea here is sweetened. I said, oh man, I'm 52. I'll end up with a bad headache if I drink sweetened tea. I might even have a heart attack. I'll have some sparkling water, thanks. The waitresses were asking how long I was going to be in town. They recommended various places where I could go get bottled water and fruit and vegetables for my 2-night stay. One said, go to this place on that street. The other said, no, try that place on this street. I said, this is nice of both of you, but I'm not from here, so I don't know the streets. Please just tell me one place. They told me about a place that had the word sun in it, and I walked in that direction, but I never found it. But I did find a 7-Eleven, and I got bottled water and oranges. I couldn't sleep, and I went back there at about 11 p.m. and I got a hot dog with no bread, because I'm told I gotta cut down on carbs. I used to look like Mark Kozelek, and now I look like one of those guys from Los Lobos. Don't laugh, it could happen to you. On my way back, I was having a cigarette outside of the hotel on an empty, lifeless street when this homeless guy came up to me slowly. His knees were all fucked up, mumbling, tossing some white tube thing from one of his hands to the other. He said something about the British press won't talk to me. I said, that's funny, we have something in common, they won't talk to me either. He kept mumbling under his breath, fidgeting, couldn't stand still. I couldn't understand him. I said, what's wrong? He said, I just need somebody to talk to. Nobody will talk to me. I'm lonely. Will you please talk to me? I said, of course I'll talk to you. What's bothering you? He stepped back about 4 feet on his messed up legs and whispered something. I stepped in closer and said, I didn't hear you. He whispered, I sell drugs. I said, man, you're in the wrong town. Calgary's no place for a drug dealer. There's nobody around here. You ought to try Vancouver or Montreal. You do better there. He said it again. He said, well, I sell drugs. I whispered back, well, I can't help you. I'm not interested in your drugs. He kept standing there, quiet, mumbling, restless. I stood there with him, smoking my cigarette. I could tell he wanted to say something else. He was all paranoid, like I was going to pull out a badge or tear his head off if he said something more risky than admitting that he was a drug dealer. His voice shaking, he said, ma'am, can I get a cigarette? I said, sure, and I gave him 4. One fell to the ground and I picked it up for him. As soon as I handed him the 4th cigarette, that guy with the fucked up knees ran off faster than a gazelle into the dark, pedestrian-free streets of Calgary. I slept okay, but not great, so today I got up and went looking for Tylenol PM. Tylenol PM helps me sleep sometimes, that or melatonin. I went to 4 different places and they didn't have any. I finally went to this place called Shoppers and asked a woman working there if they had any. She said, oh boy, I don't know about that one. I said, what's up with no Tylenol PM in Calgary? I can't find it anywhere. Do people use it to cook meth or something? Is it banned? She said, well, I've never cooked meth, so I wouldn't know. I said, well, have you ever tried meth? She looked at me startled, like she was about to call security. She shook her head with an affirmative no. I said, oh, you're missing out. It's good. Her eyes opened wide. She was seriously alarmed. I said, hey, I'm just kidding. She let out a huge sigh and led me over to the section where we found Tylenol Nighttime. I said, Tylenol Nighttime. I guess this'll work. USA and Canada name things a little bit differently sometimes. They color things differently, like their money. Everything's different. Canada gives Chinatown a day off on Labor Day. Canada has free health care. They give homeless people $1,000 a month. That's more than most of my deadbeat relatives in Ohio make working hard, shitty jobs. I came back to my hotel, took a Tylenol Nighttime, and zonked out. I just got up after noon. I went back to 2 pennies for lunch, hoping to get my self-esteem stroked again by those 2 waitresses. A hostess walked up to me and I held up one finger and said, "Just one." She squinted her eyes and said, "Just one drink?" I said, "No, I'm here by myself. It's just me." She said, "Would you like to sit at the bar?" What is it with Canadians sitting down for drinks at noon? I said, "No, I don't want to sit at the bar. I'm just here for lunch." She sat me at a table. I had Napa cabbage pot stickers and a salad. I'd never been to Calgary before. Another thing I've noticed, none of the 7-Elevens or corner stores have unsweetened tea. Even a local cafe looked at me like I was from Mars when I asked for an unsweetened iced tea. So I got an unsweetened iced coffee instead and ended up all jittery and came back to the hotel and lifted weights for about 5 minutes. Now I'm done typing this out and I'm gonna head to sound check. I look forward to getting away from this hotel and playing my show in Calgary tonight. I've played a lot of Canadian cities and there's only one of them I didn't like, Victoria. I showed up there years ago and the promoter said, "Mark, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we've only sold 76 tickets." I said, "76? Why?" He said, "Well, Nickelback is playing tonight, right down the street." I said, "Who in the fuck is Nickelback?" He said, "Mark, they're huge, and they're Canadian." So I played my show in Victoria, grumbling and bellyaching to my crowd of 76. The next day I had a day off and I walked around feeling sorry for myself, and I saw a hair place that was open. I didn't really need a haircut, there was nothing else to do. When I sat down to get my hair cut, the hairdresser asked me, "Are you from out of town?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "What are you doing here in Victoria?" I said, "Well, I'm on tour, I'm a musician. I played a show in town last night." She lit up and said, "Oh my God, are you one of the guys from Nickelback?" I said, "No, I'm not." And I stormed out of there and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna get my hair cut someplace else." And then I walked around Victoria feeling like dog shit. There was nothing to do. I was so bored. So I eventually returned to the hair place and I told her I was sorry and asked her if she would please reconsider giving me a haircut. She said, "Sure I will, but can I ask you, what's wrong?" I said, "I don't know. I'm just having a bad day. I guess I don't really need a haircut. I just need somebody to talk to." We're no longer in squeaky clean Alberta. We're in Winnipeg now. It's everything a city should be. While in Alberta, with the exception of one payphone, I couldn't find a single payphone on any of the streets, as the cities of Calgary and Edmonton have been so sanitized there seems to be no sign of any real history. Both cities were glass condo after glass condo after glass condo. Edmonton had a little grit, a few homeless people, and a derelict movie theater around the corner from the venue where we played. And I gotta say, Edmonton also had a beautiful river, the North Saskatchewan, that my hotel room looked over. The last few times I was in Winnipeg, I found the city to be bleak. I'm never anywhere longer than 24 hours, it seems. I don't know what section of town I was in during those past visits, but I remember walking around late one night, seeing 1 or 2 homeless people walking around. I ate by myself at an empty Indian restaurant around midnight. What appealed to me most about Winnipeg during those trips was its ethnic diversity. That's what attracted me to San Francisco when my feet first landed on Market Street 31 years ago. Culture. I saw blacks, whites, Chinese, Hispanics, Filipinos. The first restaurant I ever ate at in San Francisco was a Filipino restaurant on Market Street. At 20 years old, besides my mom's cooking, it was the best food I'd ever tasted in my life. When I left that Filipino restaurant, I saw a homeless guy taking a dump near a train station. I don't know what this says about me, but in that moment, I knew I'd spend the rest of my life in San Francisco. It's the homeless capital of the United States, but I've got no axe to grind with any of them. Muhammad Ali said, "No Viet Cong ever called me, you know what." Well, no homeless person ever disparaged me. I've taken more verbal abuse from my own blood relatives than I ever have from homeless people. We're all from different backgrounds and different circumstances. Some of us are stronger than others. Homeless are equal with all walks of life and deserving of love as much as any doctor, lawyer, or Tim Hortons employee. We're all sisters and brothers, all of us. Life's difficult, and as hard as it can be, let's do our best to be kind to one another. So anyhow, Patrick and I got into Winnipeg last night, and the woman at the front desk was friendly and accommodating. I requested 4 extra blankets and asked them to be delivered while Patrick and I went out for dinner. I told her that I'd leave some money in my room for whoever could deliver the blankets. We went to a restaurant called Merchant's Kitchen at around 10 p.m. There was a cage fight on a big screen TV. The place was vibrant and youthful. Young women bursting with health, stocky dudes with baseball caps. The waitress was kind, helpful, and made suggestions. I ordered a side of corn, but there was more cream and mayonnaise and butter than there was corn, which is fine, except that I'm 4 shows into the tour and I'm developing what I refer to as tour stomach. I'll spare you the details on that, but today I'm eating bland foods. I started the day with an orange, then had a bagel with no cream cheese over at Tim Hortons. I've got 7 bananas next to my bed as I'm writing this at 12:30 p.m. I got back to my room last night, and the girl at the front desk, she's the one who brought me the extra blankets. She left me this note that I brought to read to you tonight. "Good evening, Mark. We only have 1 blanket now, but I've got 3 extra duvets for you. I hope this will help. Have a good night. Front desk, Esprit." Though I got everything that I wanted last night, I didn't sleep well. I heard a lot of sirens going off, but it felt good to be in the heart of something. I went for a late night walk, and I saw a guy getting arrested. And as I was about to enter back into my hotel, some crazy looking guy walked towards me aggressively from across the street. I turned around, stood squared towards him, thinking, go ahead and mug me, I'm lonely, and I welcome the physical contact. But he mouthed off and walked off just like I knew that he would. I'm 52, I've been traveling around for 27 years, and I've got a radar for who's all bark and who's all bite. After tossing and turning all night and finishing a chapter of Henry Miller's Black Spring called The Tailor Shop, a crude yet tender account of his life and times working at a tailor shop in New York when he was 21, I got up at 9:30 a.m. and took a walk through the streets of Winnipeg. I was in search of payphones for the photo book that I've been working on for the last 7 years. I walked up and down streets called Donald, Portage, Vaughan, Graham, Kennedy, Carlton, and Albert. I struck gold. I got 7 amazing shots of payphones. This town has payphones. You have no idea how much joy this brings me. On top of that, I saw people of all colors, shapes, and sizes, some waiting at bus stops, some moving quickly, looking over their shoulder as if they were on some sketchy mission. The weather here today is a lot colder than Alberta and British Columbia, so after my payphone hunt, I went to a place called Giant Tiger and bought a flannel shirt and a thermal shirt. I went to a corner store and got bananas. I went to a cafe and again I struck gold. They had unsweetened iced tea. In Alberta, they don't have unsweetened anything. Some people write songs about drinking. Some people write songs about doing trendy, modern drugs. Some write about smoking weed. My drug of choice is iced tea. It makes me happy. At 52 years old, there are only a few reasons to get out of bed in the morning. My girlfriend, her cat, checking in on my family's health, unsweetened iced tea, and my relentless drive to make music. After Giant Tiger, I went on a hunt for Tennessee Williams' The Glass Menagerie. I went to 2 different bookstores, one called Bison Books, but I don't remember the name of the other bookstore. Neither had The Glass Menagerie, but I got Henry Miller's The Rosy Crucifixion Part 1 and 2, and The Deviltry by Jerzy Kosinski. I've got so many books, but I've still not finished them, and I'll get to them at some point. I've been coming to Canada since I was a kid. I grew up in Ohio and we took yearly trips to Niagara Falls. I've been touring Canada since 1992, from as far west as Victoria to as far east as Halifax. I've been to Toronto and Vancouver more times than I could ever count, but enough times to say that I got both good and bad associations with each city. On this day, September 7th, 2019, in this moment, I can safely say from the bottom of my heart that Winnipeg is my favorite Canadian city. You've got it all here. Payphones, cool bookstores, nice waitresses, helpful front desk people who bring you extra blankets and leave nice notes. I don't get the elitist vibe from anybody here, the vibe that I've gotten a few times from the bigger cities that I've mentioned above. During this visit to Winnipeg, for the most part, I found everybody friendly, hospitable, and down to earth. After Patrick and I finished this piece on stage that night, I asked the audience why I saw 3 guys being handcuffed in the streets within the last 24 hours. Somebody yelled, "You're naive, Mark, it's because our cops are racist." I said, "I'm not following. I saw 3 white cops arresting 3 white guys, so please explain." The same guy yelled, "We've got a lot of racial injustice here." I said, "Hey man, you're preaching to the choir. I live part-time in New Orleans. I know all about crooked cops and racism." The room went dead silent. The guy began to talk again and I interrupted him and I said, "There are racial injustices everywhere, but I'm from America, and from where I'm standing and all of my experiences of traveling throughout your country, let's add it up. You get free health care, artists get funded by the Canadian government, life could be worse." Half the audience broke into applause. I'd been to Ottawa 4 times in my life. The first time was a music festival in 2005, where we went on just before Sunvolt. The sun was shining and the crowd was mellow and wholesome. We were allowed a 30-minute set, and I don't recall much about the show, except for Jay Farrar nodding to me as I walked off stage. At that time, my then-girlfriend Kathy's mother was battling ovarian cancer. Her mother assured her that she was stable enough for Kathy to come see my show at Lee's Palace in Toronto. Toronto was my last show of the tour, the day after that festival in Ottawa. Her mother had been to Niagara Falls, and she wanted Kathy to experience the same thing that she had, a romantic visit to Niagara Falls on the Canadian side. I thought, what a beautiful idea, and arranged for Kathy and I to stay in Niagara Falls for a few nights after the Toronto show. Something that stands out about that show at Lee's Palace. 2 petite Asian girls were up front trying to get my attention, flipping their hair back so I could see how pretty they were. After the show, the 2 girls busted into the backstage area like it was nobody's business. The girls told me they were twins. I told one of them that she was shorter than the other. She replied, "Good things come in small packages." Kathy shot her a look like she wanted to kill her. I could see Kathy's mind wandering. How would this play out if I wasn't here? My main memory of that Niagara Falls trip is of Kathy and I making love in a hotel room when she got that call. Her mother was passing. Kathy was sobbing uncontrollably, and we cut the trip short and caught the first flight back to San Francisco. My next trip to Ottawa was a few years later to play another festival, Folk Fest or Blues Fest or something like that. I was playing solo when they put me on stage near the entrance of the festival. When each person entered, the scanning of their tickets caused a beep sound, a very loud beep. I was up there playing solo acoustic with a beep going on every 5 seconds, beep. When my set was over, I went to my trailer and didn't leave for at least an hour because I felt so embarrassed about how badly the show went. When I went back to my hotel, an old hotel called Lord Elgin, I remember the sound of leaky pipes through the walls keeping me awake all night. It was during that festival that Cheap Trick's stage collapsed and Death Cab for Cutie, the headliner, was canceled. Not only was their show canceled, their equipment was roped off due to an investigation about what had happened. Death Cab continued on with their tour and made a stop to buy new equipment. I remember talking to Ben about it just after it happened. He was shaken up about the whole thing and was glad that nobody had gotten killed. The next time I was in Ottawa was in 2014. The Blues Fest or the Folk Fest. Again, I don't remember the name, but my band played 2 nights. As I recall, it was September that year, and it was 2 very rainy nights. All I remember about the second night was looking out at people in yellow raincoats standing there with umbrellas, and us playing the song Carissa, when I heard a band that sounded like Dire Straits blasting away from over the hill. Our show was going pretty well for about 2 minutes, and that sound came out of nowhere, like a flash thunderstorm in New Orleans on a summer day. I thought for sure that it was some Canadian-funded band. The band was so loud, but they had a very safe, harmless sound. In fact, the volume was so loud that my drummer walked over to me and said, "Mark, I can't play because I can't even hear what we're doing. That guy's snare drum is louder than mine. I can't keep a beat to this." The album I was supporting at the time was called Benji, and their sound bleeding into ours wasn't conducive with making magic happen, and the rain wasn't helping. At that point, I had no choice but to drop the guitar and do the rest of the set as a stand-up comic. I asked somebody in a raincoat who the band was. He yelled their name. I thought, who would name their band after a quote that came out of Ronald Reagan's mouth? Maybe they're not Canadian after all. I stood there, confused, because for a solid 30 seconds, I thought maybe it was John Cougar Mellencamp, and the guy had the name of the band wrong. I'm not kidding, I really thought that. My humor was working pretty well, so I kept it going for the duration of the set. I need to put my time in to pay for all those Ottawa hotel rooms and the cost of getting in and out of there. The next day I got an email from my publicist that the band singer was offended by my comments and that he had tweeted, "WTF, dude? Did Kozelek really diss us on stage, dude? WTF? Can fans please confirm that Kozelek dissed us on stage, dude?" I thought, damn, this guy's vocabulary is spectacular, and he thinks that nobody has permission to make jokes about his music. So I had some fun with that. And as much time as it would take me to scratch my balls, I wrote a song about my experience that night. He expressed himself through a generic thing called Twitter, and I expressed myself through a thing called music. My song about that night in Ottawa got more attention than my song Carissa, a song about my second cousin who died in a fire accident. What does that say about all of us? Man, as I'm writing this, I'm thinking, I wish Willie Nelson or Neil Young or Metallica or anybody really would make jokes about my music from the stage. I'd throw a party, knowing I was on anybody's radar. Either way, here I am, still on the tracks, literally, traveling the globe and doing what I love more than anything, and sounding like nobody else in the world but me. The main thing I remember about those rainy nights in Ottawa wasn't the tweet or my jokes. It was going to see the Mayweather-Maidana rematch on a big screen TV in a sports bar after the first show, a fight in which I'd foolishly bet against Floyd Mayweather. I lost $2,000 that night. I also remember a fan coming into the sports bar and trying to sell me an enormous painting. It wasn't a gift, it was for sale. I mean, aggressively for sale, and it wasn't cheap. I said to him, "Man, the painting is beautiful, but I really gotta focus on this fight." The guy was hovering, trying to hustle money out of me. The vibe was off. Something felt intrusive and not well-intentioned about him. Wrong place, wrong time. But that's what I got for telling people where I'd be after the show. The thing is, I'm not very interested in anybody else's paintings except for my father's, because I've never seen a painter's work that's more honest than his. There's only one painting on my wall in San Francisco. It's my dad's painting of Cincinnati's Aaron Pryor and Nicaragua's Alexis Arguelles, a painting my dad did for his best friend Billy. When Billy passed, my dad gave the painting to me. The painting will remain for the rest of my life. The only painting on my wall is a tribute not only to my father, but also to his best friend, Billy. My fourth visit to Ottawa was last night, a venue called the 27 Club. We got there and the AC was cranking too loud for us to get a good sound check, but the guys at the venue understood and they dialed it down. It took some time, some poking around the venue for circuit breakers, but they were able to turn it off in order for Patrick and I to sound as good as we could. I went looking around the venue for the backstage area, went upstairs, opened a door, and saw a naked girl dancing on stage about 10 feet in front of me. Her vagina was right there. I thought, I don't recall this being part of my rider, but I stood and I watched for a little bit, realizing our show was happening right underneath a strip club. Then I closed the door. The promoter was nice and went out and got us pizza. After soundcheck and pizza, Patrick and I walked around the block in the rain. On tour, you don't get a lot of time to spend outside. People often ask, do you get to see a lot of things on tour? I say, yeah, I see a lot of carts passing me on airplanes, lots of bottled water backstage, and whatever I see outside the windows of taxis, trains, planes, or my hotel. Having time to go on a long walk is an anomaly on tour. The walk in the rain was refreshing. We played the show and it went well, except for a drunken heckler who was making a ruckus up front and had to be removed. That's what security guards are for. You get 300 people jammed into a room that serves alcohol. It's not abnormal for at least one person to become disruptive. But I flicked the guy off my shoulder like a bug and we sailed through the show. It was beautiful. The best live experience I've ever had in Ottawa. So now I'm in my Toronto hotel room, and it's almost midnight on September 11, 2019. I'm only 1 week into a tour that started in Vancouver, and my herpes are breaking out. My bones are aching, a cough is developing, and I'm fatigued. I'm not a young kid anymore. The Ohio kid who used to visit Niagara Falls every few years, probably on the Buffalo side. I'm not the 20-something or 30-something guy I used to be, playing shows and carousing around afterwards looking to get laid. And I'm not with Kathy anymore. She's got a husband and 2 kids now. And we all remember what happened on September 11, 2001. So fuck my herpes blister and fuck my fatigue. Sure, I'm not feeling my best tonight, but I'm grateful to be alive. My aunt died of stomach cancer at 44. My uncle died of pancreatic at 50. An ex-girlfriend of mine died of bone cancer at 34. Innocent people are being gunned down by mass murders at a rapidity that is unfathomable. So the way I see it, at 52 years old, I'm living on borrowed time. What more could I ask for, laying in this cozy Toronto bed, about to order the movie The Dead Don't Die? I'm here for one reason and one reason only, to do what I dreamed of since I could walk, getting up in front of a crowd and making music. As I'm finishing writing this, my publicist just forwarded me this email from a fan I met in Montreal. Hello Robert, I recently saw Sun Kill Moon in Montreal at Lestrade. I got to talk to Mark after the show about my dad who was a fighter. I wanted to say more, but I also wanted to respect his boundaries. I didn't know where else to reach out, but I'm hoping the following words can reach him. Dear Mark, I came to see you play in Montreal and was fortunate enough to have a moment to talk to you. I wanted to be brief out of respect, but there was a lot more that I would like to have said. I told you my father, Robert McCardle, Bobby Boom Boom, was a boxer, heavyweight champion of Ontario Boxing Association in 1980. My dad's stroke left him in a state that has been really hard for myself and family. I found your music around this time, and it has helped me. I don't think I've been able to have a meaningful conversation with him since. You mentioned George Chuvalo. I told my dad you mentioned him, and it sparked some genuine conversation. My dad was in Gary Summerhays Boxing Club as a sparring partner in Brantford, Ontario, and I believe this is where he met Chuvalo. Chuvalo wanted my dad to join his boxing club in Toronto's Cabbagetown. I asked him why he didn't go, and apparently it had something to do with the 1979 train derailment in Mississauga. There was something like 100 cars carrying chemicals. 200,000 people were evacuated. I'm not entirely sure why that stopped him completely, but he mentioned it. You might also know Murray Sutherland, who my dad also sparred with a lot. Other than all the great boxers, one more thing should be said about Brantford. It's where they invented the telephone. Also, I didn't know Chuvalo fought Ali. My dad told me Ali broke Chuvalo's orbital and his fucking eye popped out. Makes me feel like a huge pussy. I quit boxing because losing made me cry when I was a kid. Getting hit in the face is oddly emotional. In 1978, my dad had the chance to go to LA to continue being Summerhays' sparring partner and a potential opportunity to spar Ali in preparation for his fight with Leon Spinks. My dad wanted to keep his job in my hometown, Woodstock, Ontario, so I guess he declined the opportunity. My brother Rob is an excellent boxer and could probably pursue a career in it, but he's going to prison for potentially 5 years. He was caught trafficking fentanyl. He had it concealed up his ass inside of a Kinder Surprise egg. My sister has lived in Texas for most of her life, and she ended up in a relationship and had a kid with a fighter you may also know, named Gilbert Vera. His brother's a little more well known, Brian Vera. I was a little intimidated to talk to you, but you felt like one of the warmest, genuine people I've ever talked to, and it meant a lot to me. I guess that's one more reason to never read the fucking garbage that music magazines put out into the world. Anyhow, it's music like yours and Elliott Smith's that have helped me navigate this chaotic existence, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope one day to be able to write songs like that. Caleb. It's good to be back in Asheville. I've played here 3 or 4 times in the past over at the Grey Eagle. I love that venue. I especially liked it when they served Cajun food. The cook was from New Orleans. I asked him once if the crawfish were fresh or frozen. He chuckled, turned his back on me, came back, set a half a dozen live crawfish on my table, and we watched them crawl around. He said, "Do they look fresh enough for you?" He and I hit it off. We shared a mutual love for New Orleans and Southern food. As years passed, he eventually left the venue and the kitchen became something else, maybe Mexican food. They always treated us well at the Grey Eagle, and I was loyal to them for years. But this time around, the Masonic Temple came up with a slightly better offer, and I've got bills to pay. So here we are, and so far, so good. I never had a bad time in Asheville. People are friendly here. There's a holistic, homeopathic vibe, and everybody seems healthy and happy and good-natured. Everybody sort of glows. We went to Whole Foods today, and there was a trio playing outside. 2 women on ukulele, and a guy playing the melodica. One of the women's names was Katie Sachs. We had a nice time talking to them, and she gave me her CD. I walked away from them thinking, not only did they sound good, but they glowed. Believe it or not, years back, I considered buying a house here. I was a lot younger. Someone was driving me around. I saw this big old beautiful house on a hill that had a for sale sign on it, and I thought I could probably live here. But then the tour went on, life went on. I ended up back where I started, and where I still remain. My favorite place in the world, California. I've lived there for 32 years, but who knows? I may buy a getaway home here at some point. So there's Asheville, and then there's Nashville. 2 very different places. I've had some good shows in Nashville, but I've always felt that the city wants people to believe it's something that it's not. Okay, so Jack White bought a house there, but to me, it's still the capital of country music, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there seems to be this overcompensation going on. Every time I talk to people in Nashville, they keep telling me how progressive the city is getting, how cool it is, like they're trying to sell me a used car or something. Or more like a used car with a bobcat in the backseat that they promise won't bite. In my mind, if a city is something, you should be able to visit the place and see and feel the vibe without it being explained to you. So I went walking after my show in Nashville last night, and some guy was selling hot dogs in the corner, listening to a country song with a chorus that went, "Drink a beer." Then I'm walking down the street, and from the balcony of a bar, drunks are throwing buckets of ice on people's heads as they walk past. And I thought, yeah, this city's a little shinier than it used to be, a little glossier, sure, but I completely get why Kid Rock calls this place home. Like I said, I've always had good shows there. I have a close friend who lives an hour outside of Nashville. His grandmother was like a grandmother to me. 2 of my grandparents passed before I was born, the other 2 when I was around 7 or 8. I always stayed in my friend's grandmother's spare room when playing Nashville. Her house was quiet and set back in a quiet cul-de-sac. Her name was Dorothy. She died in 2016 at 96 years old. She loved me and I loved her. She cooked me breakfast. And when I was away, she'd always ask her grandson, "How's Mark doing?" You know the cover of Ghost of the Great Highway? She gave me that photo. She gave me a shoebox full of photos one day and said, "Pick a photo and keep whatever you want." I picked that one. She had no idea who the girl was in the photo, but guessed by the shoes that the photo was taken at the turn of the century. But anyhow, last night in Nashville, we played this chain place called City Winery. Nice staff, a good sound man, and a nice grand piano. When I walked out on stage, barely anybody clapped. And I looked down, and I saw this couple at a table gorging on French fries. I thought, when Nick Cave walks on stage, are people eating French fries in his front row? Did that happen to Elvis? I know I'm not that heavy a hitter, but I was thinking, my God, can you please show a little bit of respect? I gotta sing for 2.5 hours and listen to a couple in the front row crunching their French fries and smell the greasy fucking things while I'm singing. The thing is, I didn't just think it, I said it. As the show went on, at least a half a dozen waitresses were walking around and taking people's orders while I'm singing songs about my father who's on life alert, tribute songs to my mother and to Ohio, and songs addressing gun violence. Within 5 minutes of being on that stage, it occurred to me that I'm not a dinner theater artist. The City Winery is one of the worst things to happen to music since Kenny G. Chris and Scott and I gave it our all, but when we finished a song, the audience applause was about as loud as the sound of somebody shaking a pepper shaker. So I started giving the audience shit, telling them that they didn't understand music that wasn't verse, bridge, chorus, guitar solo, verse, bridge, chorus, chorus. And I said it just like that, with a strong redneck accent. That didn't go over well. You know why? Because it was true. The truth hurts. There was a young man in the front row who told me he was in Nashville studying music business. So I invited him up to the stage and asked him to explain music business to me and to the audience. He got up on the mic and took the opportunity to plug his EP that's on Spotify. People laughed and so did I. I said, man, nice plug, but that's not what I asked you. I asked you to tell me what's going on in the music business. He told everybody, well, I don't really know, but there's a new music venue in Nashville that lets you park for free. I said, that's all you got? That kid could sing though, I'll give him that. He duetted on a couple of songs and man, he could really sing. He was landing phrases on these beautiful, unpredictable notes that I'd never come up with myself. I can't put my finger on it, but since my earliest days of going to Nashville, that place to me has been in a perpetual state of an identity crisis. At the end of the day, the audience didn't get me, and I didn't get them, but that's okay. I picked up my check, and I got the fuck out of there. On the drive from Nashville to here, Chris and I were discussing why the audience was so lackluster. Chris has a scientific mind, and he said, well, Mark, you have to understand, when people are sitting down, drinking beer, and eating macaroni and cheese, it has a set of effect on them. It makes them sleepy, and it requires too much effort for them to raise their hands and clap. As we drove further, we ended up at this rest area called Buffalo Valley Rest Area Smith County Welcome Center in the Smoky Mountains. I'm working on a photo book about the decline of the payphone and asked the guy working there if there were any payphones around. It was the most well-kept rest area I'd ever been to. He said, well, we don't have payphones anymore, but I can show you the pads where they used to be. One's 30 yards north and the other's about 30 yards south. I'd be happy to walk you over there and show them to you, my friend. I said, well, that would be great. We walked to both of them and he showed me these large oblong cement things in the ground called pads where payphones used to be. I took a few photos and said, this will be great for my payphone book. I got photos of payphones from all over the world, South America, Asia, Australia, Europe, the USA, and Canada. He asked, do you mind if I ask you, how are you funding all this, my friend? Yes, I'm a musician. Music takes me all over the world. I played Nashville last night. I'm on my way to Asheville for another show. He said, well, what kind of music do you play? I said, well, on this tour, I've got a pianist and a drummer, and I'm singing. It's sort of melancholic, but with some humor. A combination of me singing and doing some spoken word. He said, well, my friend, this is a little over my head. I said, well, you're not alone. It was over the heads of about 80% of our Nashville audience last night. He said, well, that's the thing about art. Some people are going to get it, some won't. I said, man, I'm 52 years old, and I've been doing this for 27 years. And you just summed up art in one sentence better than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. He said, well, my friend, I hope you have a better time in Asheville. And this book of yours, it sounds real interesting. You're a unique fellow, and I've enjoyed talking with you. I said, same to you, my friend, and I shook his hand and complimented him on the cleanliness of the rest area. He said, well, we do our best. On the way back from Whole Foods today, we crossed the French Broad River, and I saw a big mural that said, stay weird, and I thought, I love this place. It's 4 in the afternoon. We're on our way to Winchester, Virginia tonight, to stay at a halfway point between Asheville, North Carolina and Sellersville, Pennsylvania. We just stopped in a town called Chilhowee to eat McDonald's. It's disgusting, but it's what you gotta do when your stomach is growling and there's nowhere else to go. While we were there, we stopped into a few antique shops, and one had a glass case full of swastikas and Nazi-related antiquity, the kind of stuff that Lemmy from Motorhead collected. I wish some of my far-left, East Coast, West Coast friends who never end up in places like this could see things like this. All they ever tell me about is things that they read on the internet or see on TV. The internet will tell you this and that, but there's no education like travel. The thing that they wouldn't get at all is everybody around here is actually pretty nice. At least to us three white guys. In the second shop, I bought Caroline a midnight blue mid-century McCoy flower vase. On the way out, we stopped in a gas station. I bought some bottled water and saw 2 stacks of bumper stickers. The choices were Trump and Dump Trump. The woman working there pointed to the Dump Trump sticker and said, "I'm going with that one." I said I'd go with it too, but they didn't have anything to stick it on. I told her that I didn't own a car, that I didn't have a guitar case, and that I didn't want the word Trump on a suitcase. She scrunched her eyes at me and said, "Please step aside, sir. Next customer." Our last show on the east side of the USA is tomorrow night in Sellersville, Pennsylvania. We had a great show in Asheville last night. Lots of love from the crowd, good sound, and Isabel Castelvi was great on cello. There was a big tall guy up in front with a beard, and I asked him how tall he was. Instead of answering me, he gave me a business card. I'd read it tonight, but I left it behind in Asheville. I do remember it gave a description of his height, 6'7", and it listed answers to the 3 most common questions people asked him. Yes, he played basketball in high school. No, he's not a lumberjack. He's actually a graphic designer. And it said, played giraffe in high school plays. Then it said something like, "Thank you for asking. This has been a great conversation. I'm still sick as a dog. My bones are aching. I'm drinking water and taking Excedrin." It's now after midnight, and we're at the Wingate Hotel in Winchester, Virginia. When we got in, I needed to get some walking in, and Chris joined me. We went to Starbucks and sat and talked for a while. Then we went to Ruby Tuesdays, and I got a steak and a baked potato, and we talked a while longer. We paid the bill, then we walked back to the hotel. My herpes blister went away for a few days, but it's blistering back up again under the left side of my bottom lip. I was dragging myself around on that walk, but I needed the exercise. I can't sit idle all day. I'm gonna take a bath now and try to get back into Henry Miller's Black Spring, which I've not opened since a flight from Edmonton to Winnipeg a few weeks ago. We've got an 11 a.m. lobby call tomorrow and a 3-hour drive to Sellersville, I'm told. Now it's early afternoon, we're back on Highway 81, and I think we're in Pennsylvania right now, but I'm not sure. But not long ago, we stopped in a mini-mall in Hagerstown, Maryland. We had a choice between a sushi place, an Indian place, and Jimmy John's. I asked a kid who was working at a Radio Shack type of place which was the best one. He said, "I don't know, I've only been to Jimmy John's." The sushi place was the busiest, so we went with that. It was interesting for me, being in a Japanese restaurant with Polaroids of white people celebrating their birthdays all over the walls and country music playing in the background. Things have changed a lot since traveling these roads with my old band, the Red House Painters. There were no Japanese restaurants and mini malls back then. White people in predominantly white towns didn't have Japanese or Indian restaurants back in 1993. But they did have these creepy signs on hotels that said, "American owned and run." I'm glad to see these backwoods places becoming more accepting of restaurants of various ethnicities, and I'm happy to not see those "American owned and run" signs on the side of highways anymore. You know, I just thought of something. Ethiopian food was a big thing in the 90s, especially in major cities. I noticed that it's went out of style. My theory on that is you gotta eat Ethiopian food with your fingers, not with chopsticks or forks or spoons. I think it's out of style now because if people eat Ethiopian food with their fingers, it'll mess up their phones and they won't be able to Google things during conversations or check their Facebook pages. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're telling your friend a story at dinner and he's fact-checking what you're saying while you're talking. Well, if you were eating Ethiopian food, he wouldn't be able to do that. Ethiopian food isn't conducive with phone obsession. The town we were in last night, Winchester, Virginia, didn't have any of the ethnic food options mentioned above. We had 3 meals during our travel yesterday. The first one was at McDonald's, the second one was at Dairy Queen, the last meal was at Ruby Tuesdays. Between our last show at Asheville, North Carolina, and wherever we are now, we've seen some interesting things: antique shops with swastikas, Nazi memorabilia, options between Trump and dump Trump bumper stickers. And with all that, I somehow managed to find my girlfriend a beautiful blue vase. And this morning in the lobby of the Winchester Hotel, I met a guy who had a shirt on that said, "I don't drink and I know things." I mean, I'd just woken up 10 minutes earlier and I thought that's what it said. I told him I thought the shirt made a smart statement, so I called Scott and asked him to come downstairs to get a photo of me standing next to this guy. I told the guy, "That's a smart shirt. I love it. Drinking isn't good for you. That shirt makes a positive statement." He just stood there smiling while we waited for Scotty to come down. I was getting bored waiting for Scott, so I asked the guy if I could take a picture of the shirt with my flip phone. He said, "Okay." When I gave the shirt a good look, I realized it actually said, "I drink and I know things." I thought, oh no, I don't want to take a photo with this guy anymore. And right when I thought that, Scott showed up with his camera, and we got the photo shoot over with fast. When the guy walked away, I told Scott, "Man, I misread the shirt. I had it off by 1 word. I assumed the shirt had a positive message, but it was just one of those dumb redneck shirts you see sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Shirts that say things like, 'I'm nuts for girls with tight butts.'" We just crossed over a wide, beautiful river, and I just saw a sign that said Downtown Harrisburg. Not sure how far we are from Sellersville, but tonight's our last show of the tour. I've been nursing a cold for the last week, so I look forward to my flight back to San Francisco tomorrow. All I can think about is my girlfriend, my bed, her cat, and sleep. But at the same time, it's our last show, so I plan to give it my all tonight. We've got a 2.5-hour set, and everything I sing is going to be from my heart. Fighters say, "We're going to throw down," and that's what we're going to do in Sellersville tonight. We're going to throw down. Now we're at the Sellersville Theater, and I'm typing this out during sound check. Just back from an antique shop next door called Pickers Junction. I bought my girlfriend 4 Harlequin plates, 3 chartreuse, and 1 turquoise. I was thinking about staying an extra day tomorrow to see Ollie's fight camp in Deer Lake. I'd heard it had been renovated and is open for public viewing. It'd be nice to do that, or to just relax and spend an extra day here in Sellersville. It seems like a quaint little town, but my body's telling me it's time to go home. At SFO with Caroline on the way to the Porter-Spence fight at Staples Center in LA. Sean Porter is the underdog, but I'm a fan. He's from Akron. We're going for the Ohio support. Plus we've got comp tickets. Porter's coming in against Spence with a height and weight disadvantage. Less than 50% of his wins are by KO. Spence is taller, 3 years younger, and has an unbeaten record. All but 3 of his fights came by way of knockout. Our flight is over an hour late, so we'll probably miss the preliminaries. We've got a rental car all set up for when we get there, and hopefully we'll get to the Staples Center by the time the televised fights start. This is all a perfectly timed distraction because my dad's almost 86 and he's getting a shoulder surgery in a few days. A shoulder surgery that he's sworn not to get because it could be the end of him, being anesthetized at his age and all of that. So yeah, depending on how all that goes, I could be on a flight from LAX to Cleveland in a few days, and I hope that's not the case. I'm still short on good, clean shots for my payphone book, so we're gonna spend tomorrow driving around various parts of LA to get some more. Well, to be real, I'm not really all that short on good, clean shots for my payphone book, but I'm up for whatever I gotta do to prolong the distraction of my dad's shoulder surgery. I got some good sleep last night, and I feel ready for the day. I fell asleep to the last 2 episodes of Project Blue Book. More than the series content, I like the sedative effect the show has on me. The mid-century decor, the old lamps and phone booths. That's how Boardwalk Empire affected me. I like the way the show looked and felt, the painkiller effect, too sedated and cozy to follow the show's story. The plane is about to land. The guy in the aisle next to me is talking to someone behind him about what makes a good intern. He says you don't want to get an intern who has interned twice, and to never hire an intern based on their hair. Always best to go with their eyes. Interns with hazel-colored eyes make the best interns, he says. The girl behind us has had too much to drink while waiting for the delayed flight. She's bragging to the woman sitting next to her, slurring her words.
My husband wrote, directed, and produced, and was a lead actor in his own movie.
Her neighbor humors her. Well, what other things has he been in?
God, zillions of things.
I turn around to take a look at her, and she's shit-faced, and I'm thinking, I'm glad she's somebody else's headache and not mine. We arrived at the Hotel Figueroa in downtown Los Angeles, feeling very hungry, but only had time to check in quickly and run off to the fight. We ate hot dogs from a vendor along the way. Downtown LA had a lot going on. A K-pop concert, plus a Spence Porter fight. Lines for each event were intersecting. We had 7th row seats. The tickets were through my friend Mark, who works for Fox Sports. He's working the desk tonight, not the commentary desk, but the desk where the fighters who aren't on the card analyze fights and give their opinions in between fights. We walked into the chaotic foot traffic at the Staples Center, and I saw that John Molina was in the early rounds of a fight with Josito Lopez. We were trying to get into the VIP section as fast as we could, but I kept ducking into various entrances at the arena to see how the fight was going. The last time I saw John Molina in the flesh was in 2012, when he'd been wiped out by Antonio DeMarco in the first round, the Oracle in Oakland, on the undercard of Ward Dawson. DeMarco came at Molina with an assault of punches that John wasn't expecting. He outgunned John Molina, sat down on the bottom rope near the corner of the ring, and with a relentless attack of unanswered punches, the ref stopped the fight within seconds of round 1. DeMarco won by TKO. We were 4th row back on the floor. I was wondering why John didn't take a knee, but I'm sure he was in shock and just didn't know what to do. I remember promoter Craig Goosen looking at me just after it happened like he wanted to rip somebody's head off. Craig's father Joe was working John's corner. The last time I'd seen John Molina before tonight was on TV. All I can remember is how bloody his shorts were. It may have been his fight with Lucas Matisse, but it seems more recent than that. Either way, I considered reaching out to the Goosen family with an offer to buy the shorts. Those white shorts covered in blood represent what life means to me, all or nothing. I was going to make a $10,000 offer for the shorts, but didn't want Craig to think I was mental, and I didn't want to mess with my connection with the very generous Goosen family. We finally found our seats, and yeah, we were in the 7th row, but not the 7th row of the floor. We were higher up, but we had a nice view. The tickets were free, so no complaining at all. I made notes starting at Lopez Molina round 5 that looked like this. Lopez Molina round 5. Round 6, Lopez landed 150, Molina landed 70. Round 7, Molina dropped at the end. Molina takes a knee. Round 8, 2 good shots by Lopez. Ref stops the fight at 2:19 of round 8. Next fight, Barrios versus Akhmedov. Akhmedov southpaw. Akhmedov white shorts. Barrios black and gold. Super lightweight title. Akhmedov, question mark. And 4, ref does count. A slip or something. I'm not sure anything connected. By the end of the 5th, looks like Barrios connected about 70, Akhmedov about 59. At this point, I got a text from Mark saying, "Come on down to the desk. Security will let you through. I'll make sure." I was looking at the sea of boxing fans between me and the fluorescent blue desk, hemming and hawing to Caroline about how far it was and what hell it was going to be to get down there. I was thinking, Keith Thurman's down there, and I like Danny Garcia, plus Mark got us in for free. But goddamn, getting down there and back is gonna be hell. Caroline said, "There's nothing happening during this fight, you should go." I looked back down at my phone. Ray Mancini is down here. Ray Mancini. I told Caroline, fuck, Ray Mancini is down there. I gotta go. And I went on my path to get to the fluorescent blue desk. I had to go down a few levels until I got to a security guard who said, "No, you're in the wrong place. Your seat's way over there." I said, I know. When I saw Mark waving to me from the blue desk. The security guard saw Mark waving to us that it was okay, and she said, okay, and she walked me down to the floor. When I got to the floor, I was stopped by a black security guard who looked like a black refrigerator, and a white security guard who looked like Mr. Clean. They looked at my ticket and said, "No fucking way, you're not going anywhere." At this point, a small security guard, about the size of Kevin Hart, came over to them and said, it's okay, they want to talk to him. The refrigerator guy and the Mr. Clean guy said, "Go back up the fucking stairs." I told them, "Look, this isn't my idea, this is their idea. Look, they're waving to me." At that point, an enormous security guard standing next to Mark threw a laminate to the short security guard. Mr. Clean took it from him, looked at the name on it closely, then looked up at me and said, "Let me see your ID." This guy was on fire, ready to pick me up like a little kitten and walk me through the crowd and throw me back into my seat. I pulled out my ID. "This isn't your name, motherfucker. Get the fuck out of here now." At that point, the enormous security guard at the blue desk came running towards me and grabbed me by the arm and pulled me towards the desk. Mr. Clean following along saying, this is illegal, that's not his fucking name on the laminate." When we got to the desk, Mark told Mr. Clean, "It's just going to take a few minutes. I just want to introduce Mark to these guys." At this point, Ray Mancini walked over to me with a big smile, and I walked towards him. When we met face to face, I gave him a hug, and I said, "You're from Youngstown. I'm from Massillon." He said, "I know, brother, I know." I said, "I've written about you." And he said, "I know, brother, I know." He was analyzing the fight, so I didn't want to keep him long. I fist bumped Danny and I walked over to Keith, but he was talking with somebody and I didn't want to interrupt. Mr. Clean said, "Okay, come on, that's enough, let's go." Mark whispered to me, "Take a seat around here, man, anywhere, take a seat." I told him that I would, but the Caroline was near the section and I didn't want to leave her by herself. I was in a daze as I found my way back to my seat next to Caroline. All I could think was, I just met Boom Boom. I can't wait to call my dad tomorrow and tell him I met Boom Boom. We spent last night at the Figaro Hotel downtown, but there was too much noise coming from the bathroom vents. We tried 3 different rooms and they all had the same hum coming from the bathrooms. At about 10 a.m., I got a text from Mark, who was at a bar watching the Cleveland Browns game with Sean Porter and friends. He was inviting us to watch the game. We checked out of the hotel and went over there. Sean had a big smile the whole time and was holding his child. You'd never know if the guy had been in a fight the night before, nor that he lost. He and I talked a little bit about Ohio, and I told him it was an exciting fight. Mark was showing Sean the replay of his knockdown in the 11th, telling him that most guys wouldn't have gotten up from that punch. My feelings that Porter had to have rewatched that punch 1,000 times in his mind since it happened. He lived through the punch that more or less cost him the fight. I talked to Sean a little more, told him that my mom lived in Akron. What I took away from meeting Sean was his smile. He lost the fight, but as a human being, from what I could tell, he was a winner all the way around. I'd not watched a football game in years, but with 2 minutes left in the game, it looked like Cleveland was way ahead. I had work to do, so we left the bar at that point and set out to get enough payphone photos to complete my book. I've got enough, but I want more options. We started somewhere around Koreatown, then went through Filipino Town into East LA, where we took a rest and had a nice dinner at a place called Casatina. We then went to Compton. I'd say I got about 50 shots with my disposable cameras and my flip phone throughout the day. I'd never been to Compton before. It was one of the bleakest places I'd ever been. No signs of life other than a few homeless people sleeping on sidewalks every few blocks. What a horrible place to be homeless. Nobody passing by to help out. As we drove down Compton Boulevard, I looked down alley streets. It reminded me of those movies, the ones with young kids shooting each other, Boys in the Hood, movies like that. Caroline's on the phone talking with her friend about lunch plans tomorrow. I've emailed Claire about our lunch plans tomorrow. I forgot to mention that when I met Sean earlier today, I got a photo with him. There's something about standing next to a fine-tuned young athlete that makes you look like garbage. I look so goddamn colorless and rubbery standing next to him. I look so depressed. And I forgot to mention that we checked out of the Figueroa and booked the Le Parc Hotel in West Hollywood, where I feel more at home. But yeah, when Caroline showed me that photo less than an hour ago, I immediately grabbed 2 bottles of Fuji water and shadowboxed for about 5 minutes, then did some push-ups and some leg lifts. The day started at 10 o'clock in the morning, with Caroline kissing me goodbye on her way out the door to meet her friend for lunch. Claire and Estelle were meeting me for lunch and a payphone photo shoot at 12 noon. I told Caroline to please call me at 11 o'clock in the morning to make sure I was up and ready for Claire and Estelle. At 10:30 in the morning, a friend from Seattle called. I'd not heard his voice since around this time 2 years ago. He was distraught over some things regarding his 11-year-old son. It was good to be on the phone with him, discussing his worries. It was a nice back and forth, and I gave him a good pep talk. I talked about my life at his son's age, about how my family and I worked through it, that I was confident that he and his family would do the same. It was a nice talk, and he seemed pretty calm when we got off the phone. When people ask what I would have done with my life if it wasn't for music, I tell them that I think I'd make a pretty good counselor. I'm a good listener, and I could read people pretty well, not in a judgmental way, but in a compassionate way. Caroline was calling at 11 o'clock in the morning, but I wasn't off the phone until 11:45, and I had to hurry up and get ready. I sent her a brief text saying that I thought we should stay another night, and she agreed. The hotel rooms at Le Parc Suites are like apartments, a big living room, a fireplace, a cozy bed, and everyone in LA are still talking about art, music, and films like they used to in San Francisco, way back, before Mark Zuckerberg moved to Noe Valley. My dad's getting his shoulder surgery tomorrow. While driving around with Caroline yesterday, I called him and told him I met Ray Mancini the night before to lift his spirits, but it didn't work. He said, "Ray Jr.? Boom Boom? Ah, his dad was the star. He was in movies." I said, "Yeah, I met Ray Jr., Boom Boom. What movie was his dad in anyhow?" He said, "I don't know. His dad had a bit part in some movie way back." That's my dad. My dad has more respect for Ray's dad because his dad had a small part in a black and white movie. I can't impress my dad. There is nothing I can do to impress him. Last night I met the most famous fighter to ever come out of Ohio, other than maybe Aaron Pryor or Ezra Charles, and my dad's not impressed. Either way, I hope his surgery goes well tomorrow because I'm not in the mood to fly back to Ohio. By the way, I didn't have the heart to tell my dad that it's not Ray Jr. Ray's dad's name is actually Lenny. While driving around Hollywood with Claire and Esau noticed a payphone near the corner of Beverly and Fairfax, so we pulled up to the corner to get a shot. As he pulled up, I saw the movie theater I used to go to while staying at the Beverly Laurel Hotel throughout the 90s. I remember seeing Pet Detective there. I peeked down the road towards the Beverly Laurel Hotel and told Claire and Esau that's where I used to stay in the 90s. So many memories flashed through my mind standing on that corner, getting a shot of that payphone, mainly the amount of energy I had back then. I was never short on friends to meet up with, and the Beverly Laurels where I stayed while mixing songs for a blue guitar over at Mad Hatter, a studio owned by Chick Corea. I actually set the Neve console on fire over there. I had some notes sitting on the console next to burning candles, and I dozed off on the couch while Mark Needham, my engineer, went out to get some. When he came back, I was woken up by the sound of him knocking the burning papers off of the board with his hand, saying, "Man, you set this desk on fire." 2 interns came in and saw some of the buttons and melted into the board. They said, "Everybody, let's keep this between us. We don't want anybody finding out about this. We'll order the new parts, but everybody keep their mouths shut about this." Isaac Hayes stopped by while we were there. It was a Scientology-run studio, and maybe he knew Chick Corea or something. I asked him to sign my guitar case, and he signed it. "All the best, Isaac Hayes, 1/12/1996. I remember 2 different front desk guys at that hotel. A Filipino I used to talk food with, and a Mexican guy who I used to talk boxing with. The Mexican guy, we talk at length about guys like Salvador Sanchez, Ruben Olivares, Jorge Paez, Oscar De La Hoya, and Julio Cesar Chavez, and his controversial win over Meldrick Taylor in their first fight. He told me that he used to be in a gang, and due to his gang associations, he'd done a few drive-bys that haunted him because he didn't know if he'd actually killed anybody or not. I liked the Beverly Laurel because there was a restaurant right downstairs called Swingers that was open late. I eventually grew out of that hotel and didn't enjoy the vibe of the restaurant anymore, but I met a lot of interesting, famous people in there, like James Woods, Adam Sandler, and actor Peter Green, the guy from Laws of Gravity. And I had a lot of nice meals in there, once with some actors, including Anna Paquin, who told me, if I'm ever in a movie again where they need a musician to play a part, I'll tell them Mark Kozelek. She gave me a Pez dispenser and I still have it. I could go on, but that hotel and some of my experiences there have been captured in songs like Cruiser and Third and Seneca. Claire and Esau and I also drove past Hollywood and Vine, and another flood of memories overwhelmed me. I stayed at the hotel there, the Roosevelt, a few times during my earliest trips to LA before discovering the Beverly Laurel. Once when opening for Mazzy Star at the Mint. Hope liked the song Lord Kill the Pain, and we sang that one together backstage. My show was such a train wreck that I left immediately after. It was me singing with a pianist named Dan, and the whole crowd talked during our show. I'm told that Ben Harper was on before me, but if that happened, I never met him. That show was 1994, and if my memory is correct, I don't believe the TV in the hotel had a remote control. We later filmed some scenes from Almost Famous there in 1999. The pool scene, where Russell and William talk about what's good for a few people to know versus millions. Now I'm with Caroline at Gate 23 at LAX, waiting for our flight back to San Francisco. We had a little time today and went for a short walk. I stayed at that hotel 4 or 5 times in the past and always walked left on my way out, and took a right on the next street and walked past a magazine stand, then would end up at some expensive restaurant or another. I never took a right out of there and had no idea that the next street over was Melrose. We took a right on Melrose and saw a place called Earth Cafe. When I saw its wooden sign out front and all the people sitting outdoors, I recalled the last time I ate there. It was February of 2003, a few weeks after Katie died. I was losing my mind up in San Francisco, and the tax man wasn't giving me a break because Katie had passed. Some friends who were living in LA at the time invited me down to spend time with them, and they were nice enough to give me a spare room. I I remember working on my taxes in their living room, lost in a world of sorrow and memories of Katie. Caroline asked where their place was, and I told her I had no idea. I was so depressed over Katie's loss and don't remember much about that trip, except for how I felt, and the pile of paperwork, and my friends who were there for me when it all went down. My friend Andy came over and took me out one night. We met up with some friends. Nothing could pull me out of my funk, but I remember my friends being there for me, and I'd completely forgotten about Earth Cafe until I saw it again. We just ate there a few hours ago. I can still taste the smoked salmon and capers and onion. On the way out, I did an impulse buy at a clothing store called All Saints. I bought a black flannel shirt and a pair of black tennis shoes. Lisa left. I wanted to leave with her. I was anxious to leave too, but I couldn't find my keys. She bolted out the door and said, "See you on December 2nd. We'd been editing me and Kevin's book all day at my apartment. We had lunch at about 2:30 p.m. and by the time we got back to my place, it was getting dark. I don't really know what San Francisco's like in November because I'm usually overseas at this time. Before her and I left my apartment, she wanted me to ask Kevin something, a reference he made in the book that she didn't understand. Just as I went to text him, he called, and he didn't sound good. He said his mom's health was declining and that everybody was coming by the hospital to see her. I stepped outside and told him to give his mom my love. I told him I'm here for him. Anything I can do to help, please let me know. I came back inside and didn't mention it to Lisa. Kevin's call came right at the moment that I was looking at an entry from him in our book, one about his mom. So I found my keys and I left a few minutes after Lisa. I texted Caroline and told her I'd meet her at City Lights and that we'd figure out where to eat dinner from there. As I walked down Jackson Street through Chinatown, I wanted to cry, thinking of the photo of Kevin's mom with Rosie Perez, thinking of her videos of birds that she filmed from her Bronx apartment, thinking of Kevin and her watching Anthony Bourdain every Sunday. I could feel all this tension in my face and this heaviness in my heart, and I wanted to break down. I probably would have, but I somehow held it together as I passed people on the way to meet Caroline. I got to City Lights, got my head together, and bought a copy of John Fonte's The Road to Los Angeles as a gift for a friend. That's my favorite John Fonte book. For me, The Road to Los Angeles is Southern California's version of The Catcher in the Rye. The Confederacy of Dunces is the New Orleans version. Caroline arrived, and I told her about Kevin's mom. She said, "Oh no, I feel so bad for Kevin." We had dinner at Tommaso's. I was telling her all kinds of stories, a diversion, I guess. I mainly told her about the nightmare I had last night, where some guy let himself into my apartment, and the guy was standing right there in my hallway, a big slobby guy with jeans and no shirt. He looked like one of those meth dealers in True Detective or something. He started slurring his words, or maybe speaking in tongues. He was just standing there, not moving in one direction or the other. I started screaming, and then I woke up. The dream was so real that I checked around my apartment to see if anybody was in it. That happened at 4:30 in the morning. I then checked my emails, and some were coming in from Kevin just as I opened my laptop, and another from John in Ireland. Even though it was all cyber, it was good to have some cyber company at 4:30 in the morning. It helped me to shake off the nightmare and to settle down, and Kevin's mom was still with us. During dinner, I asked Caroline, "Am I talking too fast? Am I telling too many stories?" She said, "Well, a lot's coming out of you at once." I asked her how her day was. She said it was fine. We mostly talked about Kevin and his mom, and I told her everything I feared in regards to losing my parents, the chaos of it all. I dreaded. Today's my dad's 86th birthday. He's still being nursed back to health by his ex-girlfriend at her place in Dover. I can't remember if I've mentioned it or not, that my dad had a shoulder surgery. My writing and my conversations with people are all starting to blur into one thing. Anyhow, I talked with him earlier, and he said he made friends with a few guys at a nursing home a block away from his ex-girlfriend's. Based on how tired his ex-girlfriend sounds every time I call, I have a feeling my dad may end up living at that nursing home. I'm the type to visit my dad when he's sick, but he doesn't want me there right now. He doesn't want any visitors. He told me that December would be better, but for now he's still healing.